Good evening, Terry.
I own a motel not too far from here, and you'd be welcome to spend the night in one of the empty rooms if you'd like.
It burns! Oh, it burns! And I'm the devil.
Thank you, one and all, for coming down the dark alley. Tonight's guest on the Necronomicast, it's Mr. Johnny Hauser, well known in the paranormal investigative world. Johnny is the world's leading historian and expert on the living and dead history of the Villisca Axe Murder House in Villisca, Iowa. He has been featured on just about every paranormal investigative television show in the last 5 years, like Ghost Adventures, Paranormal Lockdown, Ghost Lab. He knows them all, and he's going to be telling us some stories about Villisca, about his life in the haunted heartland of America. Together, we will explore strange theories about the paranormal, cryptozoology, and everything else unexplained in our world. So, sit back and relax as we chat with Johnny Hauser.
And now it's time for a trip down Brian's dark alley. Don't go there alone.
Yeah. Got him now.
And here we are. He's calling in from the heart of the haunted heartland. We're pleased to have on the show tonight Mr. Johnny Hauser. Johnny, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so excited to talk to you. Like everybody knows that listens to the show, we deal a lot mostly with horror movies and television and books, but we like to kind of leave the horror of Hollywood behind and talk about true crime and the paranormal and cryptozoology and things like that once in a while. So it's really an honor, and it's going to be a lot of fun to have you on the show tonight. How are things in Villisca?
Oh, doing good and as weird as always, I suppose, you know.
Right
when
on.
I first moved to town, I thought, is this like the Twin Peaks or like a Twilight Zone episode? I love Villisca. I love everybody in Villisca, but there's a lot of weird history here for sure.
Oh, absolutely, and we'll get into some of that weird history. Now, as I kind of told you before, we started rolling tape. Me and a couple other hosts from the show, we've spent the night a few times in the Villisca Axe Murder House. Always a great time. Loved the town of Villisca, and we really had a great time over at the cafe. Is that TK's? Is that the cafe?
TJ's Cafe.
TJ's. Man, that place was good. It's just a perfect Iowa hearty breakfast after a night of paranormal investigation.
Exactly. I mean, and their tenderloins, if you get the chance, they're huge and amazing and good old fried American food.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure to bill them for a commercial from the podcast. So
yeah, we're in Villisca at TJ's Cafe.
That's right. So you mentioned when you moved to Villisca, so you weren't born there.
No, not at all.
What's your background?
I lived in Charleston, South Carolina for a while as a kid, and we kind of bounced around. And honestly, the crime in the particular place we're living was getting so bad. My parents said, "This is no place to raise kids. We're moving to Iowa where nothing happens." That's their words, not mine.
Right.
And they moved us out here to a little town called Coburg, which was population 36. So, as you can imagine, my childhood was spent, well, if you've seen the Napoleon Dynamite, where he's doing the essay on Loch Ness Monster, I remember watching that and not getting it because I literally did that in 7th grade. I was just a weird kid that there wasn't anybody to run around with. I had a few friends, but my earliest memories going out in the woods looking for Bigfoot tracks and, aliens. I've always been all about the paranormal and the weird stuff. And I got older and ended up becoming a musician, toured around for probably about 7 years with a gal out in Nashville, which I always thought was the dream, but in reality it was horrible.
Yeah.
And ended up meeting my wife, and we got married, she got pregnant, she wanted to move home where her family was from, which was Villisca, Iowa. And I was like, ooh, what's the Villisca Villisca Axe Murder thing? And she's kind of like, yeah, but tired of hearing about it at this point. And day one, I walked down to the house, and Darwin Lynn was out doing some kind of project, and I bugged him with questions, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and he goes, "Do you just want a job? You're here all the time, so I might as well be paid." And I said, absolutely. So, and back in those days, I mean, this was before Taps was out on Sci-Fi, before the big boom of the ghost hunting shows, and I was like, man, I will do whatever if I can have the keys to this place and go in and investigate anytime I want to. And he's kind of like, okay. Yeah. And that started the whole thing. And, here I am about a decade later, still doing this whole paranormal thing.
Sure. So when you were growing up, did you ever, you said you were interested in, things like looking for Bigfoot tracks. And I had to laugh to myself because like when Leonard Nimoy's show In Search of came out, we were all about Bigfoot that summer. We thought maybe he'd be down in the Omaha sewers,
Yeah.
We just thought we would go find Bigfoot, and we were always reading books on him. But I never had like a paranormal or any kind of experience at all like that growing up. Did you ever have any paranormal things when you were growing up, when you said you moved around?
Absolutely.
Oh.
And this kind of starts off, it's a long, weird story, but when I was a baby, little infant, my mom was actually cleaning up the bedroom in this 2-story farmhouse. Evidently, I crawled out of the 2nd-story window and fell to the ground 2 stories down. Of course, Mom's freaking out. She runs down there, and I'm like completely fine. Like nothing's wrong. She didn't even take me to the doctor, which that was the 70s. It was a whole different time. And she always just said you had angels, watching after you. So flash forward, I'm probably 9, and that's when I lived in probably my first haunted house. I remember vaguely like crying and screaming, and I'd wake up and I'd be in the living room, weird things happening. We moved about 7 more times, and it just progressively got worse as far as things happening. The one house that I remember the most, doors open and closing, objects moving, voices. Dad, I can remember being, very young. 2 a.m, Dad's waking all of us up. He's got a loaded 12 gauge. We're behind him like ducks in a row, going room to room, thinking somebody had broken the house because the noises and bangs and doors slamming was that prevalent. I started playing guitar about this point, and I'll never forget, this was like a Ghost Box session way before Ghost Box, the shack hacks and stuff came out. I had my guitar, my amp, and a wah pedal, and the wah was fully forward, and somehow that worked as like a antenna, and voices started coming out of my amplifier. So I'm like freaking out because I, like 11 at this time. I had no idea what was happening. So Mom and Dad come in, we stick a cassette recorder in front and start asking questions. And it started answering the questions. And we took this tape to everybody in my family, and they're like, "Oh, that's great grandmother so-and-so's voice. I'll never forget it." And it said something about a car wreck, and like a week later I got in a car wreck. It was just freaky and weird. And, I can think of 2 UFO encounters I had growing up. One of which was all the family was out. We seen this thing. We all jumped in the car. Dad's hightailing it, chasing it. We end up in a farm field. There's a cop sitting there in the middle of a farm field. Like, what is that? And the cop goes, "I'll never forget this." He goes, "The hot air balloon." Like the typical response, And
right.
It's like, no, it's not. So that really and since then, long story short, sometimes I get trailing off on these things, and you got to rope me back in.
No, you're doing great. I keep flashing back to my childhood and thinking about,
yeah.
God, I wish I would have saw, something for. And when you were talking about your guitar pedal and everything, I remember back in the mid '80s or whatnot, when we were kind of starting messing around with music and things, and somebody in the neighborhood had like a real illegally powerful CB radio. Now, I'm not saying this was your experience, but I mean, I know it was our experience, because you turn on the radio or something and you hear breaker 19, what's your 20? I mean, and I don't think it was the ghost of some trucker, but
I would love to find that tape today. Being a lot well versed,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it was radio signals at some point, but I don't know if it was just like a mass. Like Dad was very level-headed about that stuff, and all my family are just like, that's, was it like a mass deal where people are hearing what they want to hear? I'm not sure, just because it's so long ago, but that really got me revved up into it. And, since then, I've been back to those old houses, because I thought, was it me? Did it? And so I interviewed my family and stuff, and they all had, that stuff happened, but those houses were weird. And so I ended up going back to those houses and knocking on the doors and doing the really awkward, thing. I used to live here, and anything weird ever happened?
Right.
Every one of them looked at me like I was crazy, and they're just like, no, what do you mean? And then so I'd go on this ghost story, and they're like slowly closing the door on me, And so at that point, I thought, is it haunted houses or haunted people?
Yeah.
Because none of these houses had deaths or anything in them,
But at one point you said you were talking to, was it great grandma or somebody's, whose voice was it that they heard? Grandma's voice?
Yeah.
Wow. See, I've been reading. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My family, I'll never forget at a young age that everybody gathered around listening to this tape, and bawling their eyes out, 40, 50-year-old women crying and men crying. That's my mom's voice, and that just had quite an effect on me at that young age, I think.
I've been reading some Hans Holzer old books, the famous ghost, the ghost or Paranormal Investigator. And there's different things I've been picking up about different kinds of hauntings. Of course, there's what they call a residual haunting. And I'm just saying, I'm kind of talking for the people that don't know these things. Obviously, you're well versed in them. Like a residual haunting versus an intelligent kind of haunting. And then there's also, I guess, for lack of a better word, demonic. So it sounds like in an instance like that, when somebody's kind of communicating with you back and forth, that would be an intelligent haunting, like a spirit, somebody that's maybe crossed over but still is able to communicate, or somebody that hasn't crossed over.
Somebody has some kind of message to send out. And, this is relatively still a new field. I mean, I have these talks many times in Denny's, at 4 a.m. after an event or an investigation. It's like, is it ghosts? Is it interdimensional time traveling Bigfoot? But what is it? What is communicating, or what is happening? And we don't know. We kind of have some theories that work out, that we can kind of say, I think, with intelligence and residual and all that, but we still don't know. Well, nobody knows, I guess, until we'll find out someday. But
sure. So fast forward now, you've become friends and now a worker with Darwin Lynn, who purchased the Villisca house along with his wife, and then kind of transformed it, kind of made it go back to the way it looked back in the early 1900s in terms of they I don't want to say remodeled, but they just kind of took it back to how it was.
Yep, and that was he owned the town museum, and he caught wind that the town was going to bulldoze the house, and he's like, gosh, it's horrible what happened, but you can't destroy it. It's our history. It's our town. He's a big history guy. So he bought it to go with a museum. Pretty soon people start contacting him wanting to stay the night, and he's kind of like, why? And they're like, paranormal investigating, and he whispers, what's a paranormal? Like, he had no idea.
Right.
And he has hesitantly allowed it. And then quickly, he found out that the paranormal community is just a lot of very respectful people, and, it just, here come the TV shows, and boom, I mean, that place just lit up.
What I enjoy about the place, after staying there, and everybody, you can go to the Villisca Axe Murder House website, villiscaiowa.com, and they have all kinds of great things about the history of the house, the folklore, and also how to arrange a overnight or a tour, too, of the place. What I really like about the place, too, the 2 nights that we spent there, and, we got there in early evening, so it was light out. There's no lights inside the place. So we kind of took our tour with you, hung out in the place, and it's a step back in time, and it's a living museum. It's a living museum, and it's so nice that you can go in there and unwind, and kind of investigate the house on your own schedule. It's great. You have an overnight investigation because it's hard to know where to start in a house like that, because it's a small house. Small little farmhouse, and the brutality of the murders that took place there, to this day, are just so sad, so horrifying. For the people that are listening right now, that aren't really quite familiar with Villisca, can you kind of give a history of the crime that night?
It's June 1912. And the town had a church service, which got over about 10. And the Moores, which were a family of 6, come home with 2 little girls named Ina and Lena Stillinger. And they just happened to stay the night that night. The next day, Mary Peckham, the neighbor, which is the house I live in, noticing something's not right, and she's knocking at the windows. Finally, she gets a relative down, and he finds Ina and Lena downstairs, and the authorities come and find the Moores up. So there were 8 total. 6 young kids, 2 adults. The killer, however, left the axe in the house, raw bacon on the floor, covered all the mirrors, left food at the table, bloody water, all kinds of stuff, which was, of course, destroyed by the townsfolk trampling through the next day to look at it. Detecting, even if it was perfectly contained crime scene, though, all they had back then is questioning people looking for motive, and that went on for 5 whole years. And whenever the shows focus on the same 3 people, which I see why, because they got to make it quick and to the point, but you had 5 years of gossip in a small town about a murder. There were literally hundreds. Everybody was a suspect,
Mm-hmm.
But Reverend Kelly, a minister, was the only one tried for anything, and he was acquitted of all charges, and it still remains unsolved. We still have no clue at all what happened. It's just a sad story all the way around.
8 people murdered with the blunt end of the axe, and the axe was there. People were coming in and coming and going, investigating the crime. You probably had reporters walking through the place. So yeah, like you said, there was no such thing as CSI or DNA or any kind of forensic real testing. But even if there was, it was totally, compromised immediately. And
Absolutely.
And what a horrible, scary thing in the small town. I mean, the reverberations of this crime, the shockwaves that this crime created, it knocked the Titanic sinking off the front page back in 1912, didn't it?
Yes, it was the crime of the century. I mean, it was unheard of. It's family and little kids. It's just Mary Peckham, the neighbor, died 6 months later, and the cause of death was a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
We're talking 15 years after the fact. Entire families would move into one house together, all sleep in one room together. Finally, people just left because they were terrified that the axe murderer would come. I talked to one gentleman, elderly guy here in town. He said this would have been in the 20s and 30s. He went to a small school, country school, and he was walking and he saw a guy carrying an axe over his shoulder across the field. He told the teacher they barricaded the doors shut, all hid till he passed by and then canceled school that day. This is a long time after the fact, People were still that scared.
Amazing. Yeah, I was just thinking, I remember seeing some documentary about it, and, back in 1912, everybody had chopped wood to heat the place. And so every house pretty much had an axe laying outside to go out and chop wood. So it was just, it's such a brutal crime, but it really drove home, or really shocked them, because, an axe, everybody had an axe. It was in their backyard. What if it was my house? Somebody could have come and taken my axe and snuck into my house. And the whole thing about them going to sleep and it happening when they slept. So now, over 100 years later, people are flocking to this place with their digital recorders and their night vision cameras. I remember being there and talking to you in the house, and you said, like, over years, over time, sometimes, maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but sometimes the haunting changes. Do you still feel that way? Like it was the horror of that night, but also, is there something happening with people bringing in their own paranormal investigations or things like that? Is the haunting like multifaceted now?
The 10 years I've been here, it has changed dramatically from, here recently, the most recent thing has been a lot of poltergeist activity, which is a lot of stacking objects and things moving, and which usually poltergeists involve a household with a young child going through puberty, and that kind of seems to be the common factor in a lot of these cases. In a place where nobody lives, and I think it's investigators go to different places. They get little hitchhikers, and let's just say you're a ghost and you want to communicate something to somebody. I mean, you're probably going to go to where people are listening to you. And at the house, I mean, it's a revolving cast of investigators wanting to make connections. And it's like Grand Central Station for ghosts. And like here recently, we got EVPs in French. There are 0 French ties to the house.
Wow.
So it's like, going out in the woods and turning on a flashlight. You're going to get every insect or bug in those woods flocking to it like a beacon. And I don't even know what's happening in that house anymore. I used to keep tabs on it. Now I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Your guess is fine, man. What's happening?
It's probably better off not knowing exactly what's going on in that house. Well, what I was wondering about is, like, are the ghosts, are they residual? And if they are residual or not, I don't know. But do they know we're there? Do they sense us? And are these children scared of us? And because we didn't have, we had some weird things happen, like weird sounds and things like that. I don't have exactly the best high-powered forensic audio equipment. We just take our digital recorders and then dump the files in our computer and with our monitors and listen the best we can. But so you hear things, and maybe things when we're not talking. So if they're my point is that, like, if they're residual, are they conscious that we're there, or is that more of an intelligent being? And could they be scared of us? I feel almost kind of bad that we're in there trying to conjure, and we were kind of yelling, maybe trying to get like a darker, maybe the ghost of the killer. And I don't even know if that's even, I look back and I'm like, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah. I think that, I don't think it's, there's been some residual stuff happen there, but then there's been a lot of things happen that people say are the kids, which the stuff that happens and people say it's the kids, it's not typical of what a 10-year-old in 1912 would have done. But I honestly think, and I threw this out to one of the Travel Channel episodes, and they morphed it into the killers in the house, which isn't quite what I meant, but you walk into a room and somebody just had a fight. You can feel that negative energy as soon as you walk in. And I said, well, what if something like this happens and it just seeps into the walls, the floors, every being of that house, and maybe, that energy can portray whatever it wants to. Because everybody goes in, who did this? Tell me your name. Tell me the name of who killed you. And everybody's got different names, and every one of the names I've checked into, and they're all suspects, even ones I never heard of. So it's like it's just playing with people, just messing with them. And another fact, a lot of people, I'd say 90% of the people that come down will have dreams of the house before and afterwards. And at first I'm like, they're just excited to come down. But I've noticed a trend of people. It's almost like the house latches on to them. Like if you put it in your mind that you want to visit, it'll latch onto you and it'll suck you in and draw you in. And to me, that's a little scary and dangerous.
It seems like, and I've heard like descriptions that the house almost seems alive. A lot of ways.
It's kind of like Rose Red, Stephen King, I think it was, movie Rose Red. The house takes on its own character. It's like when Darwin put it back to its original form, it was just like turning the light switch on. From that moment, it's just become its own entity.
Amazing. So you live next door. Do you think anything's ever followed you home?
Oh, absolutely.
Jesus.
When I first, I've done easily over 300 investigations of the house by myself, just having the key and being like 10 feet from the place. And when I was really doing that, it's in the middle of that, stuff started following me, which I thought it was cool. Like, I would love my house to be like Carol Ann's bedroom, and stuff flying around. That'd be awesome. But it started affecting my kids, which isn't so cool, Yeah,
it might be cool for Mr. Hauser, but not Mrs. Hauser. I bet she didn't enjoy that too much.
Yeah. See, I'm a huge horror movie guy too. It's like my wife and I, it's like I'm Rob Zombie and she's like Mrs. Prom Queen popularity, How we ended up together, I have no idea. But she hates all the scary stuff. I love it. But as soon as we started moving in, my daughter's talking about Hattie constantly, imaginary friend, And it got to where she wouldn't even go in the house. And finally I'm like, what is wrong? She goes, Hattie's mean to me. I go, who is Hattie? Like, I'm sick of Hattie at this point. She goes, that's the woman upstairs, which is total horror movie moment. And I'm like, you want to watch SpongeBob here? And I'm thinking, Hattie's an old name. Like, where did she come up with that?
Sure.
So I call up everybody I know. Nobody knows Hattie. I'm hoping to hear, oh, great-grandmother Hattie's watching over from heaven. No, nobody knows Hattie.
Yeah.
And when Darwin passed away, I'm going over the deeds of the houses. Mary Peckham passed away. And then the house went to her adult daughter, Hattie Peckham. And I'm like, no way. Yeah, there's no way my daughter would make this up, How would she make it up?
Wow.
From that, and I would put cameras in my house and without my wife knowing, leave. And I mean, I got video after video. One of the coolest ones is it's on a curtain, but just in the living room. The curtain lifts up like somebody's peeking out of it for about a minute and then drops back down. I mean, it's like a good 3 foot off the air, just floating. Doors open and closing. I mean, just you name it. And finally, I just stopped investigating the Axe House. Stopped investigating anywhere. Anytime something would happen, I would ignore it. Prayed a lot about it. Just like it just stopped. It ended, and then it's been nothing for quite a few years. And then my buddy Nick Groff called up and was like, "Hey, you want to help me do some of these Nick Groff event tours that we're doing?" I'm like, absolutely, I'll come. So I rushed back into investigating again, which I love, and I'm a lot smarter about it now, and still nothing's happening at our house, so that's good.
Well, that's good. Yeah, and I enjoy, you mentioned Nick Groff, originally from part of the Ghost Adventures crew, and now he's got his own show. Now it's on TLC, is that right?
Yes.
I just caught you on one of the most recent episodes about Malvern, Iowa. What is it with Iowa? But this Malvern, Iowa place, this Malvern Manor, looked really interesting. It was an old kind of a small hotel back in the day when the train service used to run through Malvern, and when the interstate system kind of opened up, the train system stopped, and so the town dried up a little bit. Is that the history in a nutshell of the town, Malvern?
Yep, yeah. And, later on was the hotel, and it became an old folks home, a mental place that was kind of like the lady wanted to help people with addictions or problems. So, like, there'd be a guy who was an alcoholic in the same room as somebody that was schizophrenic. You know, she just wanted to help everybody, from what I gather. And, you know, it just, the place, I don't know, there's something about it. Anytime I hear about a new place, like, I got to go. And I'm all about these Iowa haunted places, you know. For me, Iowa's one of the creepiest states ever. And there's just so much ties to the land and so many creepy places and hauntings. I got to show my Iowa haunted love here. But, yeah, so I went to go check it out, and the place is definitely haunted. And like, Nick, you got to check this place out. I actually had a shadow figure like lunge at me, so that was pretty freaky. But
what's it? Yeah, like lunge at you, and I to have something that you know you're alone in the room, aside from like a night vision camera or something like that, and to have something touch you too. Because I'm sure you've been grabbed or hair pulled or maybe your beard or something like that. But I can't imagine what goes through, because it hasn't happened to me. I just can't imagine what would go through your mind. Some kind of reality check. I mean, am I really experiencing this? I mean, it'd be mind blowing to say the least for me. How do you keep a cool head in a situation like that and kind of keep investigating without just running out like Scooby-Doo? Like,
I had a guy message me. He's like, how come whenever I watch these ghost hunting shows, when something happens, they run away instead of towards it? And I was like, yeah, I've heard that question by a million people, and until you're there in like this terrifying spot and something equally as terrifying is happening to you, it's scary. You know, you don't always want to run towards it. Your first instinct is fight or flight, you know, and with me, it's kind of a pride thing. Like, oh no, you know, you ain't gonna, I'm scared to death, but I'm not gonna let you in. Like, there's one scene on the Paranormal Lockdown where I'm walking down the hallway and all this stuff had happened. The whole vibe of the place is very bad feeling. And I was literally making my feet move. Like, I did not want to go down this hallway, but I'm literally making myself do it. Just, I don't know, maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment, but I just can't back down to people or things or ghosts, I guess.
And I don't know, it's part of the adventure that we have, going to these places and spending the night and actually going through with an investigation. That's half the fun. I just remember, I know it, when we were at the haunted schoolhouse in Maxwell, Iowa, the Farrar Schoolhouse, we were in the kind of, it's not the gymnasium, it was upstairs, like the big the auditorium kind of room. They had the stage, you know? And yep. we had the lights out, and we had like one of those ghost LED lights that kind of do a wide pattern, like a series of dots, you know, like the
laser grid.
Yes, exactly. So we had that. And at one point, now I'm a proud bald-headed guy. And at one point, I dared whatever was in the room, pitch black room, to rub the top of my head or touch the top of my head. And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
How did I say that?
You know, and it was like, I thought it would be such a irresistible treat for something out there to like, all right, I'll touch this guy. I'll feel his head, his fuzzy head. It'd be awesome. Now, do you think some people have like they're more apt to see or speak or communicate with spirits or apparitions? Or like they're something about them is like a psychic quality, or they're more receptive to, I don't know, electromagnetic frequencies or something like that? Is there something that some people are just born with, you think?
I think so. You know, we kind of call them heaters and coolers. You know, you got these heaters that can go into Walmart and get legit activity, you know. Mm-hmm. And then you got these other people that it could be in the most haunted place in the world, nothing happens. I've seen two people with the exact same digital recorder on the exact same settings sitting next to each other. One gets an EVP, the other doesn't. You know, it's like, how does it, you know, does it pick and choose who it communicates to, and I also think it's kind of like you buy a yellow Corvette. Pretty soon you start seeing other people with yellow Corvettes. You know, they didn't just all buy them the same day, but now you're looking for that. You know, and I think once you've experienced the paranormal, you kind of look for it more, and which is hard in the day these days where everybody's just kind of staring at their phones and
sure. They're oblivious to just forget the spirit world. They're oblivious to people just walking down the street next to them, humans.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, who knows? And that's why I actually don't go in with a lot of equipment myself, just because it was the same thing. I'd be paying attention to all these gadgets in my hand and
Sure.
are my battery full, and it's like, who knows what's even happening around me that I'm not even noticing.
Were you from? I know you're familiar with them. Did you know Mark and Debbie Cosentino?
Yep. Yeah. I did a few two events with them that summer, and yeah, it's horrible deal, horrible, shocking deal.
Sure. For the listeners that aren't familiar, Mark and Debbie were top-rate paranormal investigators who had a kind of a bad private life, and they succumbed to a murder-suicide. I don't want to talk about that too much at all. But what I was going to bring them up for is that when I saw them on these shows, and you worked with them, so you had firsthand knowledge, it seemed like they were almost antennas to paranormal activity, because they would work a room, from what I can see on TV. They'd each have like a recorder, and they did like live EVP sessions. Like they would ask a question and record for a while, and then stop and review it right away. And the things that they would pull out of the air were really amazing to watch on television. I can't imagine what it was like to be there watching this unfold live in person with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, certain people are just great at certain things and magnets to certain things. And, you know, with me, with EVPs, I'm kind of hit or miss, you know. Some days I'll get them, other times I'm kind of hard of hearing anyway, just from years of music. So
Right
it's
on.
like, I'm trying to listen in, and I've just got this constant ringing in my ears 24/7 anyway.
Oh, right. Rock and roll.
I think, you know, just finding people that really delve a lot of time into one particular aspect of a field, they're going to be a little more trained, I guess, on what to listen for sure.
Well, they seem to have a real talent for it, and it was a real shame and real tragedy what happened to them. But I just wanted to bring them up because I was just always amazed at the quality of EPPs and experiences that they were able to just pull out of thin air. It was pretty crazy to watch. Without getting too personal, the Catholic side of me, when we're talking about talking to the dead and asking questions, and maybe I would never do this, but ask the future and things like that. That's kind of a form of like they call necromancy, communicating with the dead like that. It's kind of a no-no. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on true like demonic forces, you know, away from scientific with electromagnetics and this kind of thing and everything. But I mean, true like intelligent evil. Do you think you've ever encountered anything like that, or do you believe it's out there?
I definitely believe it's out there. Something I'm very careful of. You know, I go to church every week, and I'm close with my pastor, and you know, it's like because it's at the Sally House one, and down in the basement where the supposed pentagram was on the floor. I'm down there my very first time, and nothing's happening, you know, and I'm asking the typical questions, and then I'm like, well, I'll try some religious provocation. So it's like, in the name of Jesus Christ, do something. Right then I felt like a bug bite on my leg, but it's like the middle of winter. So I thought, oh, maybe I got scratched. This is awesome. You know, I was hoping I got scratched. And I go upstairs, and on the back of my leg is a bald spot, and the hairs around it are like curled up. Like something took a lighter and singed the hair off my leg.
Yeesh.
And at that moment, there's a big Catholic college, and I hightailed it up to that church, and luckily they had a gift shop, and I probably about $150 worth of crosses and holy water. And then I get back, and the holy water bottles are empty.
Oh.
They didn't have any in them. So I went back up, and it was like that scene on Lost Boys where they're filling up the squirt guns and the holy water thing.
Right.
I'm filling up holy water, and I'm kind of like, am I supposed to be doing this? Like, I don't want to get in trouble, but I really want the holy water. But I think, the Catholic Church has people specifically for exorcisms and things, and, the Catholic Church does a very few exorcisms. I think it's real, but I think people play off of that quite a bit, thinking, I got scratched and my hair pulled, it's a demon. Yeah. I've been scratched, kicked, hair pulled, and that's my nephew, Like, you can have angry ghosts, you can have mischievous ghosts that scratch or pull your hair. And, I was actually thinking about this the other day, binge watching Intervention all day. And I was like, I wonder if addiction could be the modern possession. Like, in this day and age, is it like The Exorcist, where she's spinning her head in circles, or could it be by addiction? Because anything demonic is just going to want to ruin your life, and it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you're saying, and when it comes to demonic things, I think there's real true evil in the world, and
yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it manifests itself in different ways, and it's not always the guy in the tuxedo or the red suit with the pointy ears and the pointy tail. I think, you can look at different things. People's how fast they are to succumb to rage on social media, when 10, 15 years ago that was unheard of. I mean, there was road rage, but I mean, I read different posts or comments, and people are so quick to throttle somebody online. That evil, that rage is manifesting itself somewhere, or coming from someplace. And I think we're lured into different things. We're lured into the beautiful screen of our smartphones, or the allure of forgetting your family and getting into pornography or drugs. And I think there is true evil in the world, and I don't think it's always the cut and dried exorcism and the stuff that happened at the end of The Conjuring, for example. Yeah.
All you got to do is turn on your news to see all the evil in the world. And, for me, it was like, this lead singer of Slayer is a Christian and goes to church every week, and it's like, Slayer is a highly satanic band, and I was watching interviews, and he's just like, I messed with that when I was young, and I seen that's no good, so that took me to the other side. He's like, now I'm still in Slayer because it's a gimmick, and like, I'm old, what am I going to do?
Right.
Not going to college anytime soon, so I just keep doing it.
Right. It ain't broke, don't fix it.
So it's like, I think it's real, I really do. Like, my faith is not something I push on many people and stuff, but I hold firm to it. I think you have to hold firm to something, especially in this kind of field.
Oh, sure. You got to be well grounded in some way, and I appreciate that you saying that. So we talked about Villisca. We talked about the Malvern Manor. Another place we went in Iowa. No, this is in Kansas. Excuse me. And you mentioned just a second ago the Sally House, and we actually did a little Necronomicast mini show. We took our digital recorder and we recorded, with his permission, the Joe, the guy that get the tour. Talked to him for a while. Gave us kind of the history of the town, kind of the dark, seedy stuff about the KKK running the town and things like that you don't find on the Chamber of Commerce website about the town. And we didn't have a tangible, I guess, experience there, other than just weird intangibles, and just like you said earlier, walking into a place and just kind of feeling that vibe in the room.
Mm-hmm. Everybody I know has different experiences at different places, and it's almost like, you know, everybody in life is on a specific journey, and it's like those old choose your own adventure books. You know, I think going into some of these places, it's always going to be different for different people because you're on your specific journey, and that's like a little stop along the way. You know, it's what you're searching for. So yeah, you know, that's another just weird thing. You know, how can two people in the same room experience two different things? I think it's just to do with whatever path you're on, I guess.
Yeah, and like, I just wonder how that all plays out if we were talking about residual things, like if they just play out, or there's some kind of occurrence when there's enough charged energy, for example, when there's enough for it to act, rather than, yeah, I don't know. It's so weird. It's such an inexact science, but I mean, there's been ghost stories since time began. I mean, we've been living with this, just like, you know, we were talking, me and my friends were talking about Bigfoot, and of course everybody's like, well, we haven't seen one. And I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe we haven't. There's the Patterson Gimlin film. You know, some places in the United States have not been explored. There's all these natural mysteries out there, and we talk about maybe Iowa having this this energy, this kind of something that just kind of holds the paranormal right there. I don't know what happened in the course of the history of the earth that made the land of Iowa that fertile for that kind of paranormal wellspring.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's like the scientists are still finding thousands of unidentified species of animals a year. I mean, still.
Yeah.
So the idea of a unknown mammal in North America is so out there, you know, I don't know. And like the oceans have not been remotely even explored.
Yeah.
We have no idea. But we like to think at this day and age we know everything about this planet, but we know very little.
Yeah. And we're recording this the very beginning of March. I remember last month they said they found a new species of shark that they caught. And they're like, well, what is this? Well, what? Yeah, what is? Tell us, scientists, what is it? Explain that.
Just because you know, and there's, go out to Washington State or something and look at the amount of forested areas that, you know, people don't explore, or like the one Bigfoot footstep out in the middle of nowhere that nobody would ever see, and you just happened upon. Like, nobody's planning that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. If they were going to do it, they'd do it on a path where everybody's going to find it, you know?
Sure, and they could put like a souvenir stand right next to it.
Exactly. And the idea of aliens, for me, like, is it even a question anymore that there's life somewhere else? I mean, do we even have to raise that question? I mean, to me, it's obvious that there is life on other planets.
Yeah.
Mean,
absolutely.
At this day and age, what we know, it's like every top government official of other countries has come out and said, yep, it's true. But still, I know people that are like, nah, we're it. Really? You know?
Yeah, and that doesn't fly in the faith of any kind of, or fly in the face of any kind of faith that I'm subscribed to. I think that the infinite power of God, not to turn this into a religious show, everybody, sorry, but the infinite power of God, I mean, who knows what's in God's imagination way out in the cosmos? To say that there's no life anywhere else but on Earth, I think is almost silly to say. I think that's almost ridiculous to say.
Yeah, to say I understand and know everything God has done is really ridiculous of me to say. I don't know. You know, I would never even begin to fathom that. But I absolutely think that there's, you know, what they just found 7 new planets.
Yeah.
And like they're all within the hot zone that could have life, and one they're really looking at.
Yeah,
there
man.
Probably.
Who knows? Maybe we're not investigating ghosts or demons. Maybe they're invisible, cloaked aliens that are creeping around these places, just investigating us.
Exactly.
From the future.
Interdimensional time-traveling aliens is what it is, I bet.
Spectral aliens come haunting us from another realm. Man, we're really going off on a tangent here.
I love it.
I know, right?
Absolutely. I love getting in these weird, totally off the wall conversations that very well could be true.
Yeah.
You know?
Who are we to
Who
say?
knows?
Who are we to say?
Yep.
So you've I've caught you on let's see. My goodness, I think just about every paranormal show. You got anything coming down the pike or anything that we should be watching for? Or even your live investigations? I know there's tickets available and things like that this summer for things, or
Keep checking nickgrofftour.com. He's adding tons of awesome places. We've got an event at Malvern Manor and the Axe Murder House with a couple of the guys from Ghost Hunters from Sci-Fi, and you know, who knows what events I'll be hopping in on down the road. You know, just always got stuff brewing for sure.
Well, awesome. So listeners out there, if you want to check out the Villisca Axe Murder House, you just hop on Google Maps after making a reservation and head on down there and say hi to John. And check Nick Groff Tours. Is that what it is? Nick Groff Tours?
Yep.
.com. Check out what John and all his friends are doing in the world of the paranormal. Yeah, and Nick just seems like a real decent, honest, straightforward guy. I enjoyed his show a lot. I thought it was really respectful and mature and thoughtful.
Yeah, you know, I've known Nick and Katrina for many years, and they are the two most legit, hardworking, honest, so dedicated to this field. Like, I mean, just the greatest people I know. You know, they're just amazing, and definitely friends and an inspiration to me both. So
awesome. Well, everybody, I've had the pleasure. This has been a lot of fun. I didn't know we were going to start talking about Bigfoot and all that other cool stuff.
You never pull it up out.
Really, you know, it's a good conversation when we're talking about Sasquatch and ghost aliens. So I've had the real pleasure of talking to Johnny Hauser, paranormal investigator extraordinaire. You can check him out, like we said, at villiscaiowa.com and over at Nick Groff Tours. Follow him on social media and all that. Johnny, really, honestly, man, this has been a lot of fun. I'm really glad that we had the time to talk tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And always a pleasure.
Cool, man. Well, we'll see you down the road, and I'll let you know what happens if we make it out of Malvern Manor alive.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks a lot, Johnny Hauser. Everybody, that's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. On behalf of Wayne and Lori, Zip, and Doug, this is Brian. Thank you for listening to the Necronomicast.
You've been listening to the Necronomicast, a podcast hosted by a bunch of blood bags and produced by Brian Corey and Wayne Brecky. For show notes and other interesting information, go to the show page at necronomicast.com. And until next time, find something better to do with your time.